guys go ahead and roll.
Coach Greg Barnes in South Carolina. Before we start talking about football, you've had on the personal level, quite the past year and a half, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of share some perspective on what you learned through the whole process and how are you feeling now?
I feel great now. I feel as good as I have felt since before I was initially diagnosed. So that part's really, really good. My energy levels are finally back to where they need to be, I think. I was a little bit depleted probably this last year, if I was to be 100% honest with you. So what have I learned over the course of the last 12 to 18 months? My goodness. I've learned a lot about the impact you can have as a coach, which was really, really a humbling thing for me to learn. Now, I had players from way back as far as, when I was a defensive coordinator at Northern Michigan University reaching out to me on a weekly basis, current players, former players, high school coaches from all over the country reaching out to me. So I got to learn a lot about the impact that you have and not taking any of that for granted. I learned about not taking any single day at all ever for granted. Every day is a good day. So I definitely learned that. I learned, there's so much I learned. I could probably spend 3 hours talking about every little thing that I've learned. But, I learned about the strength and power of family for sure. What they mean to you, how they can pull you through different things. So it was one heck of a process. There's no question about that.
And having, I'm going to jump ahead again. Andrew Jones Tar Heel Illustrated. No, with John, I actually started to ask questions and identify myself.
Sure.
Andrew Jones Tar Heel Illustrated.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. And with what you learned,
Sure.
How much more exciting is it for you now to have the opportunity that you
Oh
have?
man, it's so much more fun. Not that it was never not fun, and I think Coach Brown talked on it a little bit. Sometimes you get caught up in the moment and the inertia of the grind, if that makes sense. You're going from the regular season to the recruiting season to spring ball to recruiting season to summer camp mode to the fall seasons coming back around. You never kind of get a chance to take a step back and really appreciate what you've got going. I coached college football for a living. That's pretty sweet. You know what I mean? A lot of the kids that I've coached are now playing in the NFL, and I get to talk to them, and they send my son jerseys every year of the different teams that they're at. He's got he got a basement full of jerseys from first-round picks to free agents to guys that are still playing, and playing on Sundays. We get to watch and cheer from all the time. So my appreciation level, my excitement level is as high as it's ever been. So from that standpoint, getting to take a step back and really learn, and just so you'll see me on Saturdays before games. I've always walked the field to try to get a gauge on where the wind is blowing and what's going on. I take it 1 or 2 laps for that. Now I take 1 or 2 laps just to kind of enjoy the pomp and circumstance of college football, and how much fun it really is and how it's one of the better games to be associated with. So for me, it's so much more fun. I'm so excited to be a part of it and to be able to do what I do.
Do you think it might change kind of how you approach relationships with kids, or since you said it was pretty strong before?
Yeah, you know what? I think I've learned. I've always been what I would consider somebody who takes kids in and wants to be a part of their lives for forever. I think I'm more willing now to dive deeper into each kid, into each guy that I'm going to coach. Not that I ever was before, that's for sure. And I realize that more now with everybody that's reached back out to me. But I appreciate those relationships a lot more. Does that make sense? And so sometimes when you're coaching, you're like, man, I should reach out to this kid's parents and say how much I enjoy coaching that kid. But something comes up, or there's a recruit that you got to talk to, or there's a play you got to go break down, and you never do. Now when I get those moments of those thoughts, those moments of clarity pass through me, I stop what I'm doing and I call that kid's parents. Or I make the extra effort to write one more letter to somebody that meant something to me at some point in time. So, I think nowadays I'm better at it than I was probably prior to being sick. Yeah.
Jonathan Alexander.
Hi, John.
The News and Observer. Nice to meet you. What in particular about UNC enticed you and wanted you? Why did you really want to come here?
Yeah, well, there's a whole lot more questions. There's probably a whole lot more reasons you would say, why wouldn't you? There's a bunch of different factors that fell into it. Obviously, I have a relationship with Coach Bateman from our time together at Army. That was really good. I think that there's unique advantages and disadvantages, or benefits and liabilities to every every school that's in the country that plays in the Power 5 level or Group of 5 level. And I think North Carolina has some inherent built-in benefits or assets that other places don't possibly have. The recruiting footprint that you've got here from Virginia down to Florida, you have access to how many thousands of players, high quality players, some of the best players in the country, all within a 2-hour flight. If you took a plane and flew 2 hours, you can get in a whole lot of different places, a whole lot of players. I think that's a benefit that you can't understate, you can't overstate. You can't place a value on that. So for me, that was huge. My mom and dad live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So my dad was born and raised in Myrtle Beach. So to be close to them within a 2.5, 3-hour radius of my family is even a bigger. My father hasn't been able to see me coach for the last 5 or 6 years. And he's getting to be 80, 81 years old now. So that's kind of a big deal for me, for him to have a relationship with my kids. So for us to be a tighter, immediate family unit, I thought was a big deal for me. To be able to coach with somebody like Coach Brown has always been something that you want to be able to do. And you can coach with somebody who's a Hall of Fame guy. There's a reason he is, right? There's a reason that you've won as many games as he has. I mean, it's not just luck. It's not just because you're at a good spot. It's because you're doing a lot of other things off the field and on the field the right way. So anytime you get an opportunity to expand your knowledge base by learning from people like him, I think you want to take advantage of that. And as long as it fits within what your family needs and what your family's going to have in order to be successful and you have a chance to win on the football field, to me that it becomes a no-brainer when you start adding up all those factors.
What you mentioned some recruiting stuff.
Ross.
Oh, sorry, Ross Martin.
Swim coach, North Guilford?
That's right.
I got you. West Guilford?
Northwest Guilford.
Northwest Guilford. I was close.
That's where Coach Lillard. What areas have you recruited? You said, I think Mac Brown said you recruited some in South Florida.
So
Any
most
other
of
areas that you.
Yeah, so most of my career, I've recruited essentially really Broward County, Palm Beach County, Collier, Lee County. Most of the time just north of Dade County, north of Miami, up to Tampa and Orlando. It's been kind of most of my career throughout recruiting. As the years have gone on, I've gotten more and more into the Atlanta area. Obviously, being here at UNC, I'll have a part of the northwest border of North Carolina. I'm still learning my geography in terms of where that is exactly. And so from that standpoint, it's really cool for me. Obviously, there'll be some connections for me down in Myrtle Beach with my family. I mean, essentially, half the football coaches in that part of the country are related to me in some way, shape, or form. It's crazy. I'm still learning every day. I walk into some place, there's one of my cousins working there. So from that standpoint, that's been really cool to be able to get back to a spot where I think it's going to be not necessarily easier, but there's a bigger sense of familiarity with where I'm going and what I'm recruiting to. So from that, I'm pretty excited.
And what's your approach or philosophy in terms of recruiting and how you get to the players and try to get them to commit?
So I think one of the things that, like we talked about here, there's assets and liabilities to every single place you go coach at, right? There's natural assets, maybe that's geography, maybe that's the geography, as I said, maybe that is the natural resources available to the school in terms of just are people physically able to get there, right? What's the recruiting base like in that area right there? What is your access to be able to get to those kids? So from a philosophical approach, I think when you look at kids that come to North Carolina, they're generally really good students. Like, it's not easy to get into school here now. So I think you eliminate a lot of issues when you're starting to look at kids who you feel can survive here academically, right? That's one of the first things you gotta look for. Number two, I think you wanna look at kids, and what's become even more and more evident over the course of the last probably 10 years for me in recruiting is when you go and evaluate a kid, obviously there's gonna be the X's and O's, athletic ability. Is he good enough to do it? But then you wanna start looking at the structure that's around that young man. What's his support structure like at home? Does his family value education? Does his family value discipline? Is there somebody in the home or in his immediate vicinity that's helped that guy have structure, that's helped that guy have discipline, right? And if you can evaluate those things, then you look at his personality, and I'll talk to the janitor, I'll talk to the principal, I'll talk to the guidance counselor. If I'm going into a school, everybody that touches that young man's life, I want to make sure that I get to know who that person is and what their opinion is. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to say good things. And it doesn't mean just because 2 of the 10 people I talk to say bad things that we're not going to recruit that guy, because everybody's got their own opinion. But I think when you recruit to a place like North Carolina, you got to recruit to a kid that's going to, that you feel can be successful here and graduate from here. And that's different in every different spot you go to. And one of the things that I'm excited is the things you look for at North Carolina. lends itself to having to be able to recruit some really good people. And I'm really, and that's shown true in terms of the kids that I've dealt with to date, which I haven't been around the team as much as I'd like to be yet, obviously with recruiting and whatnot. But it's shown true to date with the kids that I've dealt with so far. Thank you.
Mac talked
Little
about,
after effect, I still gotta drink a bunch of water.
Mac talked about the importance of improving special teams.
Yeah.
Why he's bringing you in.
Sure.
Typically, when we hear coaches talk about special teams, it's the kind of the third child.
Yeah,
It's-
no doubt.
You got to have depth. More depth you
Ask
have.
any other coach down there if they want to be the special teams coordinator. I can give you the answer right now.
Right. You got to have depth. It's kind of a key component, and then
Yeah.
you got to have either an excellent kicker, or kick returner, and those types of
It's hard to
things.
have good special teams without good specialists.
Right. So in terms of the variance of schematics like across the
Mhm.
country, is it a pretty wide spectrum?
Yeah,
Okay.
it really is, yeah. So, and I was talking to somebody earlier about this. Football over the course of the last 15 to 20 years has changed dramatically, right? It's gone from a few yards in a cloud of dust to almost basketball on grass in certain aspects, right? We're just trying to play in space and get athletes in space, and we're trying to get guys to tackle guys in space, right? Special teams has really become no different from the standpoint of where are we going to place the football, how are we going to place the football, what's the timing of it? I mean, we talk about if you want to kick a pooch kick, what's the hang time got to be, right, in order for our guys, and it varies from place to place because if your coverage unit is so fast, then obviously you need less hang time to get there. If your coverage unit's not very fast, then you're praying to the good Lord above that you've got a lot of hang time on it, right? So I think, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of variance from that. There's going to be a lot of variance from spot to spot. Some guys, I've never been associated with it, but some guys can roll the football out there and say, hey, we're going to kick the ball down there, go tackle it. That happens. We like to be a little bit more disciplined than that from time to time, but yeah, so I think there's been a big variance, especially over the course of the last 15 to 20 years. I mean, you look at when I was playing back in the 90s, there was three-man shield on the punt team, and there was pro punt, and that was it. Now there's 18 different formations from every single person. It's become an offensive play. Kick return has become the same thing. I mean, what are you going to do now? They've limited that a little bit with the fair catch rule, which I would say the next thing we're going to probably see is the XFL rule. Right? I think I will bet money that it's going to be investigated by every other level of football to do kickoff and kickoff return like that. I think it still adds the excitement of kickoff and kickoff return, but it limits injuries, and you still have to be able to do some. It still shows the talent of your team in terms of coverage units and return units. I will bet money that there's going to be a chance to see that in the NFL, and if you see it in the NFL, guess where it's coming next? Yeah, straight here to the NCAA's.
Gregory Hall with Inside
Hey, Greg.
Inside Carolina. Hey, nice to meet you.
You
What
too.
are your thoughts on that XFL kickoff rule?
I actually really like it. I really do. I like traditional football as much as the next person. But if they're going to legislate a certain aspect of it out, I would rather see that than have the kickoff and kickoff return be legislated out of football for fear of injury. To me, that's the best of both worlds. You still have to have the unit, the two units, the kickoff and the kickoff return unit, execute in order to change field position. You still got the element of what if, what about that? Whereas if everybody knows you're going to fair catch it, then let's just give them the ball on the 25-yard line to start every possession. Like, everybody's going to fair catch it, so let's just do that, right? So for me, I think it adds the human element back into special teams and in football. I mean, if you legislate out the human element of in the football game, then what are we doing it for? So I like anything that reintroduces the human element back into football. I'm all for it.
You're coaching outside linebackers as well.
I'm going to try. Yes, I am.
Can you explain what you've learned about how that role works in
Mhm.
Jay Bateman's defense? The combination between being a linebacker and also being a pass rusher, and then a look at the room and who you have seen and kind of know in that room already.
Yeah, so I've gotten a chance to see those guys a little bit, not nearly as much as I would like to have so far. Obviously, when I got here, it was right in the throes of recruiting, so you have to be out on the road and doing that and introducing yourself to new guys. The role of the outside backer so much now is really such a hybridized position. Sometimes you're out in coverage, sometimes you're holding an edge, sometimes you got to be able to rush the quarterback, and it probably goes, truth be told, if you were to look at outside backer across a multiple scheme like we are, you've got to be able, there's three components. There's edge, rush, and cover. Right? Those are really the three components for an outside backer. Can you set an edge in the run game? So if you're looking in the Big Ten, you probably want to go edge first, rush second, cover third, right? You look in the ACC, you probably go, can you rush first? Can you rush the quarterback first? Can you set an edge, and can you survive in coverage? Right? Those are probably the elements that you got to look at. In each part, in each league that you're in, those elements intermix a little bit as to which one's number one, which one's number two, and which one's number three. But all three of those elements are going to be there on a consistent basis. And when you're talking about in terms of a 3-4 scheme or a multiple base scheme, so we have to talk about with my guys in the meeting room all the time about how we pass rush, what thought process we're going to have for pass rush. Obviously, there's run force and things like that, but then we've got to also be able to survive in coverage. They've got to understand what the nickel does, right? The nickel out to the field when they start spacing the game out and putting more wide receivers on the field, they have the same job that the outside backer does. It's just we want someone with smaller, lighter feet out there covering a slot receiver as opposed to some big old 6'4", 250-pound guy. You know, you look at what we had at UCF, we had a Shaquem Griffin out there. We do both. You can do all three. So we never had to go into nickel and things like that. We just coached him up on how to be in the secondary. So he was a safety, he was a defensive end, and he was an outside linebacker all at the same time. So for us, that was really good. We benefited from his. He has such a variety of skill sets that was really good for everybody. So can you hope to find those guys? Absolutely. You know, that you never have to change your personnel grouping and you can run whatever you want. But you do have to find and mix and match those guys in terms of what situation you're at on Saturday. You know, do we want to rush guys in? Do we want to cover guys in? Do we want one rush guy, one cover guy? Do we want an edge guy and a rush guy? Do we want an edge guy and a cover guy? So all the different variances therein from day to day.
And then your room, is there anything he takes on?
You know what I'm really impressed with? What I'm really impressed with is, as I got to go through cut-ups this off-season in the month of February so far, I'm really impressed with some of the guys that are back in terms of their, I think they have a fundamental understanding of what we're asking of them. And that's not always the case. Sometimes there's a little bit of confusion going on in that room because they'll spend time with the D-line coach, they'll spend time with me, then they'll spend time with the secondary because they've got to know all three facets. It's not just one or the other, right? It's very hard. I mean, if you have to think about it, a kid's going to be asked to play a 5 technique, which is the outside shade of the tackle, maybe even a 4 technique, which is head up on the tackle. Then he's got to sometimes go play head up on the tight end, which I think is one of the hardest things in football to do. And there's the outside shade of the tight end, setting an edge. Then he's got to be able to play in space in an apex position. Then sometimes he's got to be able to carry number 2 vertical. Who else on the field has to do that? Not a soul. So while I don't think their assignments are very difficult, I think what we have to get better at is understanding and mastering the techniques that go along with each assignment. So I think they're very assignment competent right now. And I'm excited. Once you have that down, then everything else starts to become really easy. I mean, they have a great understanding of what's going on. So I was talking to one of them the other day, and I said, hey, now 5 years ago, we called it this. You guys still use that word? And they're like, yes, sir, we still use that word. Perfect. We're still on the same page with it. So, you know, it's been really good. It's been really fun. It's been kind of back and forth. And my coaching style is such that I tell my guys all the time, like, let's have a discussion. This is not a one-way street. Like, you don't learn by me talking at you. We talk with each other, and then we get a chance to learn from each other. So I get your perspective, I learn how to teach you better. You get my perspective, you understand how to learn better. So we try to keep it as a two-way street, and I think that was a little bit different for those guys to a certain degree. You know, the new coach comes in, yada, 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 and they want to just be like, yes, sir, no, sir. And I said, let just call me coach, and let's make sure we're all on the same page here, right? Let's make sure we're talking with each other and not at each other. And if we have an argument, we'll have an argument, and we'll go back out on the field and have fun. It is what it is. That's okay. Those things are all right to have.
When you're watching clips of them last year,
Yes, sir.
Do you watch them, or are you watching them chronologically so you can, because they were very new and green, so you can kind of gauge what their learning curve was, so you
we
have
did.
a better idea of what you're dealing with?
I did both. I watched it chronologically, game to game to game to game to game. And then I watched it in separate defensive calls. So you can find, you know, how did that person progress throughout the course of the season? Did he plateau? Who plateaued when? And maybe why did they plateau at certain points? Or did that person just keep progressing as he went through the season? And then you go back again, and then you watch it from a cut-up standpoint. All right, hey, he's the apex player in this play, and you watch 45 plays of that in a row. What was he good at? What was he not good at? So then you can kind of identify a skill set as it progressed. Was that skill set getting better throughout the course of the season, or was it not? So you can identify skill sets for each different kid, and you can attack those skill sets and try to build them up as best as you can from starting March 17th. I think it is.
As a special teams coordinator,
Yes,
what do
sir.
you hope to accomplish?
What's your first name again? I'm sorry.
Gregory.
Gregory. Sorry.
What do you hope to accomplish this spring?
I hope to get a fundamental understanding of what we're trying to do, and to bring a certain level of aggression to the special teams unit. Coach Brown has stated repeatedly in staff meetings of how he wants us to be really good on special teams. And in his opinion and in my opinion, if you're good on special teams and you've got good talent and depth across the unit, across the team, both sides of the football, all three different phases. So my goal is to identify for the first, we kind of broke it up into chunks, and it kind of goes, the methodology is going to be whole, part, whole. So we'll introduce the idea of what we're trying to get done. This is what it looks like, guys, when it's done. Then we're going to spend the first 2 weeks of spring ball, first 2.5 weeks, 2 weeks of spring ball, just drill work, just getting those guys to understand the skill set that we need. Because that's going to help identify to me who can and who can't, right? There's no sense in running somebody down on kickoff because you saw them twice do it right in the drill, and all of a sudden, but if you've done it for a week and a half or 2 weeks, now you have a really good understanding, can he do that or not, right? So I would rather spend 2 weeks on developing skill sets and developing depth with my guys, with the whole unit, the whole team actually, so I can identify who can and who can't, right? And then we'll put in scheme, and typically in week 3, whole team units, so we'll take team reps in practice and in scrimmages. And then you come back to the 4th week, reintroduce skill sets again, then towards the end of that 4th week of spring ball, you go back to full team unit. So it kind of goes whole, part, whole from that mindset, so that those guys get an understanding of what we want, what it's supposed to look like. This is how we break it up into separate parts, and this is what it's supposed to look like again at the end of the day. So that when you go to fall camp, when you transition from drill to drill to drill, you're not wasting time in transition. We want to be as efficient as we can in terms of transitioning from drill to drill.
Max
The limited time that we get.
Right. Max said that you can have anyone on the team that you want
He
on
did.
special
He's
teams.
told me that twice. No, more than twice. Daily.
Have you had that freedom before? And
Never.
So then-
No, well, that's not true. Year 2 at UCF, we had that freedom. Yeah.
so how do you expect that to benefit you? And do you see
My
any
goodness.
challenges with that?
Challenges? Those are good challenges. I think the benefit is clearly the value that is placed upon teams and things like that. And it's my understanding that Coach Brown's in every special teams meeting that we have, which is awesome, which is great, which is what I would want. I think when you're open to the entire roster to being on special teams, except for maybe quarterbacks and O-line and typically D-line aren't in there, I think what it does is it gives you, what we try to do special teams wise, we try to make it competent and simple, meaning that it's competent in the fact that we can handle a variety of situations, but simple enough that I can grab somebody off the sideline and say, hey, you need to go in there and do this right now, so-and-so's got a pulled hammy, go. And you're not worried about them being able to execute their job. So I always believe that simple minds make for fast feet. So for me, what I'd like to be able to do when we have the entire team in there is that when it's the first string or third string slot receiver, whether it's the first string or third string outside backer, those guys are all going to be out there competing. And when you get a different level of competition on those guys, then you find out that your team elevates a little bit in terms of everything that they do. So we're going to have a lot of fun with it. The difficulties and the challenges that come up with that are sometimes you may have a receiver who's really, really good at a lot of things and wants to be on everything. So like when I was at Northern Iowa, LJ Fort was a linebacker that we had, and he was clearly our best player. He was National Player of the Year. And he came to me and he said, Coach, I'm going to be on kickoff. LJ, I don't know if that's the smartest thing. He goes, well, I'll tell you what, Coach. I said, what's that? He goes, I'll make you a deal. I'm going to be on kickoff until you can prove that there's somebody better. Okay, well, he started for 12 or 13 games in a row on kickoff. But once everybody sees that, then everybody else is like, well, if he's going to do it, then I better do it. The problem is, there are some times where you're like, hey, bro, we need you a little bit fresher than running down on kickoff right now. But he was like, no, I'm doing it. It is what it is. Unless there are guys better than me, you're not taking me off the kickoff. So that's a good problem to have. So you got to say whoa and not giddy up.
You guys good?
Thank you.
Not a
Thanks.
must.